Hello Year 5. Welcome to your first geography lesson on mountains and glaciation. Our first lesson today, we're going to be looking at locating the world's mountain ranges. So, what I would like you to do first, how would you define a mountain? Pause the video and write a definition of how you would describe a mountain. So there is no general definition for what a mountain is, but Oxford Dictionary defines a mountain as natural elevation of the Earth's surface rising more or less abruptly from the surrounding level and attaining an altitude which relatively to the adjacent elevation is impressive or notable. Now that's a bit of a mouthful. So a mountain, when we talk about the elevation, is the height of how it protrudes out of the ground. Now the altitude is at the height of what it is when it gets up into the sky, and it is usually something that's very noticeable. So a mountain is what is usually caused as a natural elevation. So to explain it a little bit further, a mountain is usually defined as part of the landscape with a steep slope that rises more than 300 meters. So usually for a classification for a mountain, it has to reach a certain height for it to be considered a mountain and not a hill. Now there are some differing opinions from geographers who define a mountain where the summit is at least 600 meters high. So here we're now talking about double for a mountain. And some mountains are found in groups of what we call ranges. You can have individual standalone mountains, but you tend to find various mountains that become part of a mountain range. So a stretch of land that is formed by various mountains attached to each other. Some of them, however, can be standalone and are very isolated in terms of their summits. So a mountain can also be defined as being a landmass that's naturally occurring. So this is going back to the Oxford definition. So mountains are usually a lot taller and they are a lot steeper than hills are, making them slightly more difficult to climb. Now a hill is usually anything with under 600 meters and a mountain tends to be higher. Now mountains usually reach to a pointed peak, whereas hills generally have more rounded or sometimes even flat peaks. So mountains tend to have a more sharp protruding point at its summit. Now within the UK and the Republic of Ireland, a mountain is considered when the summit reaches at least 200 feet. So it's 610 meters high. Now we've talked about the word summit a few times in the last few slides. Now a summit is the highest point or peak of a mountain. So if you have a look at this picture, this is a trig point. So this is one of the summits of part of Mount Snowdon. I'd like you to pause the video and have a think about this question. How do you think mountains are formed? Jot down your ideas on a piece of paper. So there are several different ways in which mountains can be formed. Now the Earth's crust, which is underneath, is made up of different slabs which we call tectonic plates. Now these tectonic plates spread across the entire globe and they are split up into different plates. Now over millions of years these plates have moved, which has given us our different continents. Now when these two plates collide, or they touch or they crash together, they fold over one another. So one tends to sit underneath the other, a bit like when you have a car crash collision and one car goes up and over the other. Now, when this happens with the tectonic plates, this means that the rock that's underneath from that top tectonic plate is then pushed up into the ground. This type of mountain is what we call a fold mountain, and these are the most common types of mountain form. Another type of mountain is a dome mountain. Now these occur when the pressure from lots of hot magma, which is underneath the Earth's crust, pushes towards the surface. Now we tend to find magma and associate it with volcanoes, and that magma, once it reaches the surface, turns into hot molten lava. Now as that protrudes from the ground, it might not necessarily come out of the ground, but it pushes that earth and it gets further and further up. Now this magma, as it pushes up, creates a dome shape to our mountain. Now talking about magma, we also know that magma, which is the hot melted rock, is formed when volcanoes erupt through the centre. Now when this happens, the lava cools in a cone shape. So volcanoes are actually built up when these layers of cold lava actually turn to rock. And then as an eruption happens, that molten lava that then solidifies and goes hard forms another layer on top of the old layer. And as thus volcanoes start to get built over time with the different layers of cold molten lava. So what I would like you to do before we move on is I'd like you to pause the video. Can you jot down as many different mountains or mountain ranges that you can think of? I'll give you a clue. We might have looked at some of them in our North America topic last term. So before we look at some of the different types of mountain ranges, there are different types of maps that we can use that will help us identify certain areas within our continents where there are high peaks, i.e. mountains or hills. So here is an example of what we call a physical map, and you can see that there are slightly shaded out areas in a slightly orange-yellow colour, and this helps us identify where the mountain ranges are. The lighter the colour is, the less tall the mountains are. So any that have a very dark orange colour to them show that those are some of the highest points of those mountains. Now, physical maps will have a key which shows the areas of the higher elevation. So this, if you have a look at this map of Europe, you can see that these mountain ranges here in a slightly darker orange colour, these ones show the highest elevations. And here when we associate it with our key, this tells us how high those mountains are in terms of feet. So here we have some examples of some of the mountains that we have looked at before. So we have covered the Rocky Mountains before. The Rocky Mountains are a major mountain range, and we've looked at these before, and they are part of Western North America. Now they stretch on an average of 3,000 miles from the most northern point of the British Columbia, which is in Western Canada, and it goes all the way down through New Mexico and all the way down to the south coast of the United States. One of the biggest mountain ranges in the world. We also have the Alps. Now, these are the highest, most extensive mountain range, and they tend to range across the entire part of Europe. They stretch at an average of about 750 miles, and they actually stretch across 8 different countries across the continent, including France, Switzerland, Monaco, Germany, and even down to Austria. The highest point of one of the mountains, called Mont Blanc, spans the entire French-Italian border, and it is as high as 15,778 feet, making it the highest mountain within the Alps mountain range. We also have the Himalayas, which you may have heard of before, and these are a mountain range in Asia, and they separate between India and the Tibetan Plateau. So these are one of the Earth's highest mountain peaks as well, including Mount Everest, which borders the border of Nepal and China. Now, the Himalayas include over 50 different mountains with a total up to 23,600 feet in elevation. And there are another 10 of the 14 ones that meet an 8,000 meter peak. So they have got one of the largest numbers of mountains within their mountain range. We also have the Andes Mountains. Now, these are the longest continental mountain range in the world, okay? They form all along the western ridge of South America, and they range from up to 50,000 miles. And it has an average height of up to 13,000 feet. So we're peaking not far off the similar height to Mont Blanc in the Alps. Now, the Andes extend from the north to the south of America, expanding over 7 different countries, including Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Argentina. So these 4 mountain ranges are only 4 of the number of mountain ranges that exist in our continent, but these are probably 4 of the most famous and largest mountain ranges in the world. So your task, depending on how well you paid attention on that last slide, your task is to complete a table and a map identifying some of the mountain ranges that can be found in our world. Now, you have been provided with 2 different maps, one map that shows and highlights all of the different countries and the continents, and another one which is a feature map that allows you to identify where those different mountain ranges are. You will need on your blank map to identify where those mountain ranges are and draw them onto your blank world map. You will need to use both maps to support you in this task. Your second task, once you have identified where those mountain ranges are and label them onto your map, you will need to complete the table that is attached to your document. You need to try and identify which continent they appear in and which countries they span. So you are going to need to use the map that has all of the countries written on it and the continents to be able to support you with your task. Good luck.